break up with your friend. I know there is no use to confront her, but how do you say this is the end? I'm through being taken for granted. I'm the one you call when nobody's home. Being with you means just disappointment. I'm the last escape, so I've been told. Don't bring that bomb to my door again, my friend. You know that you've been crying wolf too many times. What a scam, I know it. Been there, I've done that. Those words are just sand in my hair. So talk if you like. The words will be words till you bring them to life. So talk if you like. The words will be words till you bring.
Welcome to the show. That was Talk 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 from St. Michael featuring Anya Gold. I love it when my guests dance along. That is so cute. Today's guest is Leslie Davis. I am your host, Mike Vatter. This is Let's Catch Up with Mike, and that would be me. I am so happy to have Leslie Davis on. Leslie is here to talk about her new book, You Can't Eat Love: How Learning to Love Yourself Can Change Your Relationship with Food. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mike. And I love the song. I wrote it down so that I can download it later and listen to it again because it
Awesome.
was a great song.
I'm
But
glad to hear
anyway,
that. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah, it's funny. I sometimes have guests on who just sit there like stone faced, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll just dance by myself. But I love when a guest dances along. It makes it so much more fun. So I appreciate you doing that. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into the book. What is, who is, and why is Leslie Davis?
Well, like so many other people, I am a wife, I am a mother. I, have two grand dogs and one dog, and uh, I I do all kinds of crazy things, and I wrote the book because I realized that there was another me out there, somebody who needed to hear the words that I had to say. And I've been just really grateful that people like yourself are curious about it and interested in what I have to say, because when I wrote it, I had no idea how it would be received.
Well, I have really enjoyed reading it and kind of getting to know you through it. I love the kind of the subtitle, How Learning to Love Yourself Can Change Your Relationship with Food. I've always struggled with my weight. I kind of I'm a yo-yo, when it comes to my weight, but it's not something that I struggle with in the sense of wanting to change my weight often. It's just I've kind of just yo-yoed naturally. I'm adopted, so my biology has most of my life been an enigma. And I will lose and gain weight uh, drastically, kind of without trying. And I kind of have just learned to accept that about myself. But I've learned that recently that my biological parents have kind of always been like that. So I come by it naturally, as my mom says. Um, but I love that, you talk about, I've heard a lot of people say, you either live to eat or you eat to live. But I think most people are kind of in that middle. But yeah, I love the book. What prompted you to write the book? Kind of, you said there's another of you out there. What does that mean?
Well, um, as I went on the journey, I realized that more importantly than learning what to eat was what was really going on in the background. What were the thoughts that were running in my head? What were the ideas that I had? How was I talking to myself? What were the beliefs that I had? And I realized that it was the head work that was more important than the food work that I did. And so I would encounter people who were struggling with their weight, struggling to, figure out how to lose weight. And all they were doing was focusing on the food part. They really were not looking at all at how in the heck they got there. what was going on, that they were using food as their drug of choice. And that was really the biggest thing that I realized, is that I used food as my drug of choice. That it was how I killed the pain, because I didn't know how to deal with the emotions.
Right. I love that you talk about the what's in your suitcase, the when you're packing for a trip, in the book you mentioned and there's a lot of life hacks in here and you use humor quite a bit, and intentional humor. I hope intentional humor, because I took it that
Oh,
way.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
sometimes there's implied humor, and sometimes there's intentional humor, and I took it as intentional humor, so I really enjoyed that. But the what's in your suitcase life hack, let's talk about that, because I found that to be the most fascinating. You talk about going on a journey of like a food journey, a food suitcase, and I thought that was something that most people could really relate to. And while you're kind of explaining that, I'm going to find a specific thing I wanted to mention. So I'll let you explain that while I look for my reference point.
Well, to me, we're always on a journey. And when we go on a journey, what do? We take a suitcase with us full of whatever the heck it is we need. And then how many times do we go on a journey and we end up realizing that 50% of what we took is not anything that we needed? So what I do is I talk in the book, and we go along, we pick up stuff little by little as we're going along. So that we are, just adding little by little to the suitcase. But what we're doing is we're putting in things that are going to help us, that are going to get us to where it is that we want to go, that are going to serve us rather than simply occupying space in the suitcase. I mean, for example, one of my favorite things in the suitcase is the oxygen mask.
Yes.
And that was kind of a ginormous aha moment for me, because I don't know about you, but when I fly, I don't pay attention to what it is they're saying. I don't pay attention to what they're talking about. And I happened to see a YouTube or something that said, essentially, you have 30 seconds from the time that a plane loses pressure when it's at altitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have a lot of time. And if you're busy doing what so many of us do, if you're busy putting oxygen masks on everybody else, well, guess what? You're going to be laid out in the middle of the aisle. Right. The plane is going to land, and everybody's going to get off the plane, and they're going to step over you, and they're going to say, there's that nice person that helped me. And on occasion, they may think about you, but where are you going to be? I mean, really, where are you going to be?
Right.
And so the aha part of it for me was realizing I must take care of myself first before I can take care of anybody else. I mean, I already knew that I was trying to pour from a pitcher that was empty. I already knew that. Yeah. But that is not nearly as dramatic as recognizing when you don't put your oxygen mask on first, you are going to be laid out in the aisle. The plane's going to land, and where are you going to be?
Right. That's a really great explanation. I love that. Who just joined us behind you there on the floor?
Zone.
Okay.
That's my labradoodle.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, and then I see some paws on the other side.
Yeah, Charlie's in the chair right there.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Charlie.
They're adorable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
River's the only one who's not in here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have 4 cats, and sometimes they wander around behind me, but they usually stay behind my green screen. So every once in a while you'll see the green screen shake, and it's because one of them is climbing the back of it. But yeah, I love your explanation. I know. Yeah. If it falls, then one of them is behind it. But yeah, I love your explanation of the oxygen mask and packing the suitcase, because I was talking to a guest, I guess it was a few episodes back, but she was talking about, why would you pack an ice pick, a pickaxe in your suitcase? She was talking about an emotional suitcase for loss, not for food, obviously, but we have emotional suitcases for all types of reasons. But why would you pack a pickaxe in your suitcase if you're going to the Florida Keys. We have to be very conscious of the suitcase and what limited space we have in it for whatever journey we're going on. And speaking of journeys, the reference point I was looking for was at beginning of each chapter, you have a quote or words of affirmation, depending on. And for chapter 3, where we talk about packing your suitcase, you say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that's Lao Tzu who said that. And I love that you have those little quotes and words of affirmation. Of course, my favorite is anyone who's watched the show before knows this. Never, never, never give up by Winston Churchill, which is one of my favorite quotes. And of course, political figures can always be controversial, but Winston Churchill had a lot of great quotes, and he's one of my favorites to quote, regardless of what you feel about the man. Wonderful sayings. A lot of one-liners from him are good to use. But the oxygen mask point, like you said, on an airplane, we're always told, put the mask on yourself before you put it on somebody else. But as a caregiver of your loved ones, and women often fall into this role, and sometimes men, especially if you're the people pleaser, the caregiver in your family role, your instinct is to do the opposite of that. Put the mask on the child or the spouse or the person you're traveling with, sometimes even total strangers. You want to put the mask on the other people around you because you think they are not able to, or they're panicked, or they're not in the right headspace to do so. So you want to take care of everyone else. And like you said, to mix your metaphors, you end up pouring from an empty pitcher and you're not helping yourself. So that's a thread, that's a through line in your book that I think is very important to mention. So, but I do love that point that you make. And you say, do you ever watch, to further mix the metaphor, since I've already started doing it, I'm going to continue to mix your metaphors for you. Do you watch any medical shows with an ambulance in emergencies? What's the first thing the medical staff does? They put an oxygen mask on the patient. Then they start trying to figure out what's going on. Why do you need an oxygen mask for this trip? Because you'll soon begin to realize how many times you're helping someone else put on their oxygen mask and leaving yourself gasping for air, or worse. So you have a myself-sized hole in your heart that you're trying to fill. And then you say, trust me, you need an oxygen mask. Put it in your suitcase. That's an important thing you need to pack. So I love that you mentioned the oxygen mask throughout as you're filling that suitcase, that metaphorical suitcase. So it's a key point to remember, and you mentioned it throughout the book, which I love that you keep referring to it. So that's a really good point. So yeah, I love that you have that emotional suitcase, that metaphorical suitcase that you talk about, and I think that's a very smart point. And it's not just a point about food; it's a point about a lot of things. So I love that. And this book, You Can't Eat Love: How Learning to Love Yourself Can Change Your Relationship with Food. It's not just a book in the traditional sense of reading. It's also a workbook, and you've combined very effortlessly a narrative and a workbook. Why did you decide to do that? You could have easily done one or the other, or had two separate, volumes, and had both available. Why did you decide to make them into one combined piece?
Well, as I was writing the words to the book, I kept thinking to myself, okay, well, this is a place where somebody needs to go a little bit deeper. And I was always putting myself in the reader's position. I would want to go a little bit deeper. This is provoking some thoughts. This is bringing up some things that maybe I don't want to deal with, but need to deal with. This is, it's causing me to pause. So I started adding in the stuff that's at the end of the chapter, the workbook type stuff at the end of the chapter. And then after I was totally finished, I did actually create a workbook so people can expand the work. And then I've since added a supplemental workbook so people can expand some of the really tricky areas, such as digging into their why triggers and saboteurs, because I feel like those are really, really critical. And the deeper we can get with those, the clearer we can get, the better off we are. But like I said, as I was writing it, I was having the conversation with myself. So I kept putting myself, okay, well, this is what I want to do a little bit more. This is bringing up some stuff that I'm not sure I want to deal with. And so that's where I would add in the workbook type of things, so that me and you and other people could have a moment where they could say, okay, this is what came up. Let me figure it out a little bit more. Because I felt like it was really, really important to engage the person who was reading it, and not just hand them a pamphlet and say, read this, now go do.
Yeah.
I felt like that would not be very helpful. I wanted people to realize that if we don't clean up the garbage inside of our head, nothing is going to change. And I had somebody read it who is a counselor that works with addicts and alcoholics. And she said, really, the book could be called You Can't, whatever your addiction is, whatever, you can't drink love, you can't drug love, you can't. And that's the truth of the matter. The book really is not about dieting or losing weight.
Right.
It's about learning to love yourself.
Yeah.
So that you're changing your relationship with yourself. The most important person in your world is you. And that's where, when I began my journey, that was the hardest thing for me to acknowledge. If I'm not putting myself first, how can I expect other people to put me first? Because we teach people how to treat us. And if we are speaking to ourselves unkindly, if we are making unkind comments about ourselves, well, that's what other people are picking up. They are picking up, okay, it's all right to tell her that she's stupid. It's all right to, to say all of these disparaging comments, right, because that is how she is speaking and acting and treating herself. So it's very, very important to understand we teach people how to treat us. And that's why I talk about at one point in the book, the people around us are going to start resisting the change. And the reason they start resisting the change is they don't like change. We don't like change. So anytime something starts changing, well, then those people around us have two choices. They can continue going in the way that they've been going, or they can figure out a different way. And the possibility of you continuing with them if they don't do some changing, well, that becomes a personal choice. Because a lot of times when we become a better version of ourselves, we have to leave some people behind, and that's okay. That is all right.
Right. I like that you clarified that, because at the beginning when I said I was talking about yo-yoing my weight and stuff, that's kind of my point is, it's not about what you weigh or how you look. It's how comfortable you are with yourself. And for me, like I said, I've always been a yo-yo in my size and in my weight, but I'm okay with that. It's a matter of how you feel. It's a matter of self-perception. I like that you say it's on page, I printed this, so it's for me, it's on page 12. I wondered why I couldn't stand to look at myself. My family likes homemade cookies. I would mix up the dough and tell myself I wasn't going to eat any cookies. And I'm going to skip down a little bit. And you said one of the lies you told yourself is that raw cookie dough doesn't have as many calories as baked cookies. And I love that, because we all do that with not just with food, but with other things. I know someone who says if they eat in the European way, where you cut with your you hold the fork with your left hand and cut with your right, and then eat with your left hand, you have to take the fork with your left hand, like I'm gesturing it,
Right. Instead of swapping like
yeah,
Americans do.
instead of swapping like Americans do, that burns more calories because you're using both hands. That burns more calories, so it's okay. Or if you eat standing up, you're burning more calories. Or we tell ourselves these little lies, and we know they're not true, but it makes us feel better in the moment. Or eating raw cookie dough is less calories than baked cookies, or baked cookies have less calories because you're burning the calories when you cook them, or whatever. And I know people who they eat while walking on a treadmill. It's like, well, I mean, you're not really canceling out the calories. You can tell yourself you are, but you're consuming more than you're burning. But we do it with other things too, like, oh, I had a Diet Coke and a Whopper. That's not canceling out anything. But like you said, alcohol or whatever your addiction may be, smoking, insert issue here. We tell ourselves little lies to get through what we need to get through, and I think that's important. And sometimes it's a big lie, but the raw cookie dough is obviously a little lie. That's a white lie we tell ourselves, but those compound, don't they?
Yeah, they do compound. But the other thing that I realized, and I talked about this, is, essentially we are three people. We are me, myself, and I.
Yes.
And I say, we can lie to me and myself because they want us to be happy, but
Right.
I sees everything.
Yes.
And, I had to start accepting that telling myself these lies was not helpful. Because of the end result. Well, and the other thing is, when we're lying to ourselves, especially about the raw cookie dough doesn't have as many calories, broken cookies, all the calories fall out. Eating food off of somebody else's plate has no calories.
Well, I think that one's true. I think eating eating cookies off someone else's plate is that's true. Because you're sharing the calories. I mean, that one's obvious.
But you see that, what I accepted was that the rest of the world saw the evidence of what we were doing.
Right.
And, that's when I had to, come to the realization lying to myself was actually not being kind to myself.
Right.
Because, okay, for example, let's get away from food. How many times when you were a child and you went to the doctor and you had to get your immunizations or whatever, and they told you this isn't going to hurt right before they stab you with the needle? Yeah. I mean, seriously, how many times?
Every time, every single time.
Exactly. This is not going to hurt. Well, I don't know about you, but when I was little, I was sick a lot. And we lived in Venezuela, so we had to get, all those foreign country immunizations.
Yep.
And they would always say, this is not going to hurt. Well, I knew that was a lie, but that sets up a dissonance inside of our minds.
Yeah.
Because our brain is saying, well, this hurts, but they're telling me it doesn't. And I want to react to the pain, but they're telling me it doesn't hurt. So wait, who is telling the truth? And so we start struggling with, what is real and what isn't real. And so we're setting ourselves up with something as simple as saying, this isn't going to hurt, when holy moly, yeah, it does. I mean, I don't care who you are. It's going to hurt. We're setting ourselves up to tell ourselves stories. Now, there are times when we do need to tell ourselves a story in order to make it through something. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had an MRI. I mean, I told myself stories in order to be able to get through an MRI, because that banging and clanging and all that kind of stuff. So this is only going to last a short time. You can do this, and so you start that talking to yourself. But when we tell ourselves these lies with regard to food, we're not helping ourselves. And like I said, I sees everything, and the world sees the evidence of the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, it's not just to hype ourselves up or to convince ourselves of things. It's self-preservation, it's protection. It's like you said, it's like the id, the ego, it's all of that. Um uh um I'm lacking the word, but it's all of that. It's preservation, it's protection, for lack of a better word. Um, that we do for survival. It's not fight or flight. That's the wrong analogy, but it's that protection that we do to say, I've got to get through this, so I've got to lie to myself in order to do it. So yeah, those are all very good points. I also love that. I mentioned the Churchill quotes and the words of affirmation, kind of throughout the book, but you've got some really great points, and I don't want to ruin my I don't want, because I want people to obviously to get the book and to read it, but I love it. Kind of at the end you say, it's almost the last page, you say you're probably going to, it starts at the top, you're probably going to wonder why I didn't tell you this next part first. And I love that you start the page with that. And it says, I wanted you to dig down deep and really start connecting with the you that's running around inside your head. And I read that and went, well, yeah, I want to know why you didn't tell me this part first. Because why read the book then, right? But yeah, and then the next few paragraphs, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I can absolutely see why she didn't tell me this part first. And I'm not going to tell everyone now because I want them to read the book. But it's great, and it kind of summarizes everything and kind of gives everyone the they that they need to know. And it's very smart. But you've got quotes in here from Nietzsche, and you've got it's a brilliantly put together piece, and I really I hope everyone gets a copy of it. And speaking of which, where can they get a copy of it?
Well, everybody, you can go to Amazon.com, but the easiest way to find anything about me is on the website youcan'teatlove.com, and there are links to all the different book outlets, from Amazon to Barnes and Noble and all that. Also, all my other books are on there because I've got a workbook, and I even have a coloring book now.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
There's journal and a fitness and food tracker. And then also there's links to other podcasts. So obviously this podcast will end up on there as well.
Very cool.
But one of the reasons that it was important to me to include all those quotes is I like summarizations of my thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I struggle to put my thoughts and feelings into a succinct sentence.
Yeah.
So then I go looking for somebody else's words.
Right.
And I thought, well, if these were helpful and important to me, then they're bound to be helpful and important to somebody else. And like you, I love Churchill. Oh yeah. My gosh, I love Churchill. You may or may not agree with him, but you know what? As orators go, amazing.
Yeah.
And his words so many times, hit the nail on the head. And I recognize that a lot of times what he's talking about is, how to get the UK through a war. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm fighting a war also. I'm fighting a war to save myself and to be the best version of myself. So if his words lift me up, well, and I can't remember if I put it in there or not, but he talks about, we can only focus on the next link in the chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so many of his words, like you said, are about war or a battle, but that's every day we're fighting a war or a battle against something. And I'm thinking of what President Biden said the other day. Enemies foreign and domestic, when he was speaking in Atlanta yesterday. He said, enemies foreign and domestic, and that's whether you agree with President Biden or not. That's something we're always fighting somebody, foreign or domestic, and that's the foreign is outside of us and the domestic is inside of us.
Exactly.
That can be applied to the me, myself, and I as well, because if it's a voice in your head telling you can't do something, or it's a person outside of you telling you you're not worthy of it, you're fighting those battles every single day. And your book and your book and others like it, but your book, what we're talking about today, is a great example of how to fight those battles. So I really appreciate it. And I was going to mention this earlier and then we got off of it. I appreciate the workbook incorporated into it, and I'm glad that you have a supplemental workbook, because whenever I read a self-help book, and this falls into that category certainly, the first thing I do is I grab a pen or a highlighter and I start going through, and I muck up the pages with my highlighter or my pen in the margins. So to have yours incorporated into it is great, and that's what I wanted to mention earlier. So I'm glad that we circled back.
Well, and also among the things, I mean, like you, when I'm reading, a book that I'm looking for answers or looking for information or something like that, I've got pens and highlighters and Post-its and all kinds of stuff. And, by the time I'm finished reading the book, it looks like, it's been through a war.
Yeah.
But, the first thing that I tell you to put in your book, to put in your suitcase, is pens and highlighters and paper.
Yep, exactly. And I've got so many notepads. It's funny because over the holidays, my husband and we got each other notepads.
Oh, how fun.
We got each other journals. That's what we do. We among other things, but and this one I just grabbed it because it was sitting next to me, but I think you'd find this humorous. It's a notepad I got at a gift shop, and it says, "Things I'm totally over, but will definitely still bring up after a few cocktails."
Oh, I like that.
I just thought that was cute.
That is hysterical.
Yeah, that's when my husband found it. Actually, I found it at a little card shop, and I was like, okay, put this in my stocking. This is something I want.
Definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, but I have really enjoyed talking to you, Leslie, and I think this is a great book, and I hope everyone gets a copy of it. It's fun, it's funny, it's inspirational, and I think whether the purpose that someone picks up a copy of it for is food or a different addiction or just to have some great life lessons, I think everyone can draw something from it, and I think that's great, and I think that's kind of the purpose. You Can't Eat Love: How Learning to Love Yourself Can Change Your Relationship with Food by Leslie Lindsay Davis, and it's available on Amazon. It's also available on your website. Tell us again your website.
YouCan'tEatLove.com.
Perfect. That's easy to remember. YouCan'tEatLove.com. And I'll put the links in the body of this show link, but also obviously people can go directly to you to get it. So anything else you want to mention before we finish up?
No, I just want to say, so many people struggle, and especially I think these days, a lot of people are struggling. And what I want people to hear is they are enough, just as they are. They are not broken. There's nothing wrong with them. They are enough, just as they are. And if they don't believe they are enough, I will believe it for them until they are able to believe it for themselves.
I love that. That's a great message. I really appreciate that too, Leslie. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm going to end it there because I can't top that. So, well, thank you very much for joining us today. And the book again is You Can't Eat Love by Leslie Lindsay Davis. I really appreciate you being on today. And I'm going to play our outro music, but I'll talk to you on the other side. So hang on for me.
Thank you.
All righty.
You